Hello, children. In the previous session, we studied about how wool is obtained from the sheep. We also studied about different types of fibers. We also learned that what are the uses of wool. Then we studied about fabric, fiber, and yarn. And in the last, we had recapitulated the process of connecting how fabric is formed out of fiber. Today we are going to study about silk and the process by which we obtain silk. The exact time of discovery of silk is unknown. According to old Chinese legend, the Empress Sai Lung Chai was asked by Emperor Wang Tai to find the cause of the damaged leaves of the mulberry trees growing in the garden. So let us understand how silk is obtained with the help of this video.
Silk is one of the most prized fabrics in the world. Most people love to wear silk apparels on special and auspicious occasions. Silk is obtained from silkworms, which are cultured on commercial scale to obtain silk. But have you ever wondered that how this fiber was discovered 5,000 years back by the mankind? According to an old Chinese legend, silk was discovered by a Chinese empress. She found some white worms eating up the leaves of the mulberry trees in her garden. She noticed that worms were spinning shiny cocoons around them. She collected some of those cocoons. Accidentally, one of the cocoons dropped into her cup of tea. She noticed that the cocoon was actually made from a long thread that was both strong and soft. In this way, the fiber of silk was discovered, but Chinese guarded the secret of silk for over 1,000 years. Afterwards, traders and travelers introduced silk to various parts of the world. Silk was introduced in India about 1900 years ago. The story of its introduction is related to a Chinese princess who married an Indian prince. She was very fond of silk fabric and therefore she brought silkworm eggs to India in her headdress and fed them with the leaves of Indian mulberry trees, initiating the silk production in India. Currently, world's production of silk is estimated to be around 1,25,000 metric tons per year. China holds top position with production of about 80% of the world's silk. India is also a leading producer, accounting for 10% of the world production. India is the world's second largest producer and consumer of silk and its products.
Sericulture. It is the rearing or raising of silkworm for producing silk. As you can see, there are many silkworms which are being reared. Silk. Silk fibers are animal fibers made up of proteins. China leads the world in silk production, that is 80% of world silk production is done by China. Then comes India. India is also a large producer of silk. It contributes almost 10% of world's silk production. Then comes silk or caterpillars of silk moth spin silk fibers. Silk yarn or a thread. As previously mentioned while teaching wool, yarn is also known as thread. So the silk yarn is obtained from the cocoon of the silk moth. Tassar silk, moga silk, kosa silk, etc. are obtained from cocoons spun by different types of moths. The most common silk moth is mulberry silk moth. Here I have highlighted the mulberry silk moth. Silk fiber from the cocoon of this moth is soft, lustrous, elastic, and can be dyed in beautiful colors. Scientific names of mulberry is Morus alba. Now we will study about life cycle of silk moth. The female silk moth lays eggs which are hatched to form larvae called caterpillar of silkworm. The silkworm feeds on leaves and grows. It then secretes a fiber made up of protein that hardens on exposure to air. This fiber is silk fiber. A cocoon is a protective covering that an insect larva spins around itself. Silky threads are formed when the sticky liquid secreted by the insect to form cocoon is hardened. A pupa grows and changes inside the cocoon. After a few weeks, the cocoon opens and an adult moth comes out. Molting is the process in which each larva sheds the skin 4 times. A silk yarn is obtained from the cocoon of the silkworm. Let us summarize the life cycle of the silk moth with the help of this diagram. Let us study about the life cycle of silk moth or let's summarize it. You can see that an adult moth lays eggs on the mulberry leaf, which later on develops into a caterpillar. After caterpillar, it starts forming a thread-like structure around it and later on becomes a cocoon. This stage of silk moth is known as pupa. And again, pupa after 2-3 weeks, when it gets developed, becomes adult silk moth.
Silk is an important fiber. It is obtained from silk moth. The silk moth feeds on fresh mulberry leaves. The female silk moth lays hundreds of eggs at a time. The larvae hatch from eggs in about 14 days. The larva, called caterpillar or silkworm, eats day and night and increases enormously in size. After 25 to 30 days, the caterpillar stops eating and enters the next stage of its life cycle called pupa. It first weaves a net to hold itself, then it swings his head from side to side. During these movements of the head, caterpillars secrete fiber made of protein. This hardens on exposure to air and becomes silk fiber. Soon the caterpillar completely covers itself by silk fiber. This covering is known as cocoon. Further development of the moth continues inside the cocoon, which grows into silk moth.
The process of obtaining silk from silk moth involves 2 steps. Step number 1 is rearing of silk worms. Step number 2 is processing of silk. This step number 2 involves three procedures. One is reeling of the silk fiber, then spinning of that fiber, and at the end, weaving of that fiber. Rearing of silkworm. A female silk moth lays hundreds of eggs at a time. The eggs are stored carefully at a suitable temperature. These eggs hatches to produce larvae which are called caterpillars or silkworm. The larvae are kept in a clean boxes where they feed on fresh mulberry leaves for about 25 to 30 days and grow in size. The caterpillars then secretes a liquid that hardens on coming in contact with air and changes into a fine threads. The caterpillars covers itself completely with these fine fibers. The coverings is called as cocoon. The silkworm develops into a silk moth inside this cocoon. Processing of silk is three-step process. First is reeling, second one is spinning of fibers, and third one is weaving. Let us discuss them one by one. After gathering all the cocoons, the insect inside them are killed by boiling or keeping them in ovens, and the silk fiber is obtained from the cocoons. The process is called reeling. Reeling is done in a special machine which unwinds the fibers of silk from the cocoon. Spinning. It is a process in which silk fibers are twisted together to form yarn. Spinning is done manually or with the help of machine, as you can see in the picture. Left side, a woman is manually spinning the silk, and on the right side, a person is using machine to obtain the yarn. A cloth, that is silk cloth, is made by weaving of yarn or threads. This is the picture I have given, which shows weaving of silk yarn. It is in India, it is done traditionally in Assam. So that was all about how silk is obtained from silkworm or silk moth. Now let us discuss about the uses of silk. Silk is used in wall hangings. It is used in dress, like your mother wears silk sari or silk, your father wears silk t-shirts. Then you must have seen carpet at many houses, or you must have purchased carpet in your own house. It might be of silk if you have purchased it. Sari, upholstery. What are upholstery? They are the cover on the wooden chair. Sometimes they are also made up of silk. Now we are in the end of the chapter, and we are going to discuss about the diseases caused due to wool and sericultural industries. The first one is sorter's disease. As you can see in the picture, a person is showing his hand and he is affected by a bacteria called as anthrax. This worker must be working in the woolen industry for quite a long time, and this type of disease is really fatal. We call it as sorter's disease also, and it is caused by bacterium anthrax. And the last one is respiratory disease. Some diseases like asthma, bronchitis, and other breathing problems are caused due to inhalation of vapors arising from cocoons undergoing steaming or cooking for reeling processes in silk industries. So these causes serious chronic respiratory diseases. While steaming and reeling in the industries, one should avoid going into the steaming area where the cocoons are separated from the yarn. So that was your chapter, children. I hope you have enjoyed the chapter. Thank you.